With this historic executive order I will sign today, we're formally classifying fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction.
Does this executive order give the president more power to do more than he's already doing that Congress has not actually approved these boat strikes?
No, it is completely meaningless. It's symbolic.
Well, just recently, President Donald Trump decided to indicate that he sees fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction to America and Americans, mainly to justify attacking Venezuela militarily without getting congressional approval. That's the real point of what he's doing here. And while fentanyl has absolutely devastated communities across this country, as we've reported before, Venezuela has nothing to do with the fentanyl trade here in the US, China and Mexico do. And Venezuela is responsible for a minuscule amount of cocaine trafficking to the United States. But nonetheless, before we give you more details, Cenk, your 2 cents?
Yeah, so I'm gonna tell you why I think this is such a bad idea. Not the invasion, but using this talking point to try to sell this war. It's really stupid. And I'll tell you other weapons of mass destruction that we should attack and take the oil of later.
Oh, interesting. You got my attention. So look, Trump stated that 200,000 to 300,000 Americans die every year from fentanyl overdoses, which sounds really bad, except it's not true. Now, the real numbers are bad enough. So maybe he should have just done a little bit of research before engaging in the hyperbolic statement that he put out. But nonetheless, according to a report from the CDC, fentanyl killed roughly 48,000 people in the United States last year. And luckily, the numbers are dropping. That's a 27% drop from the year before. So I'm happy to see that the numbers are declining. However, I should also note that fentanyl isn't the only thing that's causing harm to Americans right now. The other drug that has led to severe addiction and a lot of mental health issues among the American public is meth, which is also smuggled through Mexico. And I'm not advocating for war with Mexico. I'm just making this point so everyone is fully aware and informed that this is not a war about protecting Americans from any weapon of mass destruction. So, fentanyl, again, is the leading cause of overdose deaths, or was last year at least. And over 250,000 Americans have died from a fentanyl overdose since 2021. So it is a serious problem and it shouldn't be minimized. It's just that this serious problem has nothing to do with what the US government and its military is pursuing with Venezuela or against Venezuela. Now, even still, Elie Honig, who is CNN's legal analyst, just disagrees with the labeling of fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction. He says it doesn't fit the legal description of weapons of mass destruction, and here's why.
Federal law describes what a weapon of mass destruction is. Generally has to be an incendiary device, something that blows up, something that shoots, something that disseminates poison, that kind of thing. If you commit a crime involving a weapon of mass destruction, there's very serious penalties involved. Could be life in prison, could be death if someone dies. But the president saying drugs or fentanyl are now weapons of mass destruction has zero legal impact. It's up to judges. It's up to the parties on a case-by-case basis. It's an interesting argument. It doesn't meet the definition, but it's like if the president declared that a slingshot is a firearm, it doesn't make it a firearm for legal purposes. It would have to.
Now, before I get your comments on this, Cenk, I want to note something that's really important here because some might think, oh, Trump's a lunatic, like labeling fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction is crazy, except he's not the first one to try to do it. In fact, in 2022, a bipartisan group of attorneys general urged then President Joe Biden to classify fentanyl as a WMD, weapon of mass destruction. I guess there's a lot of brain rot in this country, especially when it comes to the political elite. Back to you, Cenk.
Yeah, I want to come back to that in a minute because I think it's very telling. So first, other weapons of mass destruction in the country. Well, I've quoted the number 70,000 from some studies, but I'll take the lowest number I've seen, the conservative number. 45,000 people a year die in America because they don't have health insurance. So I guess health insurance companies are a weapon of mass destruction. So, but see, that's literal, and they actually die. The amount of fentanyl we get from Venezuela is near zero, So the number of people dying from the fentanyl we're getting from Venezuela is either zero or near zero. Like it is almost infinitesimally small. But 45,000 Americans actually die because the health insurance companies go, well, we don't think we're going to make enough money from you. So since we can't maximize profit from you, you should die, and they do. So are we going to attack health insurance companies? Have we pulled our fleet over next to United Health? There's other things, of course, like chronic liver disease from alcoholism, 52,222 deaths last year. So are we going to attack Anheuser-Busch because they're producing a weapon of mass destruction that kills over 50,000 Americans? Cars kill 222,000 people every year. So are cars weapons of mass destruction? Are we going to be bombing GM and Ford soon? And of course, heart disease is #1 cause of death in America, 680,000 people. And we've got to attack hearts over there before they attack hearts over here, okay? So this is preposterous. You can call anything weapon of mass destruction you want. It doesn't make it so. Okay, but I'm happy that they're using this talking point. And I think it's very relevant that they had that talking point ready during the Biden administration. Because there's a uniparty. What is the uniparty? It is Democrats and Republicans that serve their donors loyally. In the case of Venezuela, there are a great number of donors that want this war. The oil companies want it, the defense contractors want it, and we found out recently their hand is in everything. We found it from a Miriam Adelson paper in Israel. The dissident leader that won the Nobel Peace Prize, which is a joke now, in Venezuela, she says, "Oh no, we would move our embassy. We would do whatever Israel asks of us." And Iran and Hezbollah and Hamas have gotten drones from Venezuela, so Israel also wants us to attack Venezuela on their behalf. So that's why Biden was going to call it weapon of mass destruction, and that's why Trump is calling it that, because it was already prearranged by the donor class. It didn't matter who you elected, you were going to get this war no matter what. One more thing, Anna, I'm really glad though they're using this phrase because it's giving away the game. I mean, this is the exact thing they did with Iraq, but it's dumber.
It's so dumb. I mean, Jake, it's amazing because you're right. I mean, we're actually fortunate that Trump is dumb enough to use the weapons of mass destruction line, because the second you use that line, obviously Americans are gonna think back to how we were lied to by our government to go to war in Iraq, which of course had nothing to do with 9/11. So our government exploited the most tragic and largest terrorist attack on US soil for their own political purposes. It's disgusting, and that's what's happening here, and people are privy to it. So it's good to see that. Now you mentioned Maria Corina Machado, and interestingly enough, she did win the Nobel Peace Prize, even though she wants to go to war with Venezuela and do regime change. But she says that doing so is not a vile, violent thing to do. It's an act of love. Let's go to C4.
This is not conventional regime change. This cannot be compared to other cases like countries in the Middle East. We had an election. Regime change was already mandated by over 70% of the population. And what we need is support to enforce that decision.
How do you square military action with receiving a peace prize? Are we at the point it's necessary?
What we're fighting for is precisely freedom in order to have democracy, and democracy in order to have peace. It's absolutely absurd that you see a regime, a criminal regime like Maduro, that gets support from Russia or from Iran, and then as a benefit to non-people not to ask support from democratic countries and democratic leaders. That's absolute absurd. We do not have arms. We have our will. We have the power of organization and the power of love, which at the end, I have to say that peace is ultimately an act of love.
You're doing this for democracy? Who voted for you, bitch? Who voted for you, bitch? Which Venezuelans supported the idea of overthrowing Maduro, which I'm sure many of them would like that, but to replace him with your ass? Unbelievable. Okay, the Nobel Peace Prize means nothing. It means nothing. And then one other thing I want to go to real quick, Cenk, because I just can't help myself. In the beginning of the story, I told you about how Trump said that 200,000 to 300,000 Americans die every year of fentanyl overdoses, which is hyperbolic and not true. But get a load of Kristi Noem, okay, head of DHS, who has a different take on how basically striking Venezuelan fishing boats is saving lives.
You've saved hundreds of millions of lives with the cocaine you've blown up in the Caribbean.
Hundreds of millions of lives were saved in America by blowing up fishing boats. There's what, 330 million people in this country? It's total clown show.
Yeah, last two things. It's guys, if you're on the right, they're insulting your intelligence. So the question is, what are you going to do about it? I mean, they blew a couple of boats out of the water, what, 12 boats or something along those lines, hundreds of millions of Americans. So she's saying my voters are stupid and they won't care. Trump says a couple 100,000. There's not that many people that die from fentanyl, period, let alone from Venezuela. They're insulting your intelligence. They disrespect you so much more than anyone on the left does. I'm serious. Like, I guarantee you behind the scenes, they think our voters will believe anything. We can just make up any number. They won't question us. I think they're wrong about that over the long run, and I've seen them be wrong about it from time to time. But if you got suckered into voting, into being in favor of another war for oil and defense contractors in Israel, well, come on, brothers and sisters. I mean, you said you were anti-war. If you turn around and you're pro-war for regime change and because of weapons of mass destruction that don't exist, then obviously you learn nothing. And yeah, I don't want them to be right about you, but this is a giant sucker play. I mean, the world's biggest suckers would buy into this war.
I don't think they do.
No one else will.
I don't think they do. There's very little support for the United States engaging in a regime change war in Venezuela. The polls do indicate, though, that a lot of Republicans favor striking fishing boats that are not likely to make it to the United States and are not necessarily actually trafficking anything.
About the Nobel Peace Prize winner, that interview that she gave to the Israeli press was amazing because she didn't ask for Israel to help in the war, which would be logical if she's trying to start a war to depose the Maduro and take his seat. No, she said, I'm going to try to get America to do that war for Israel.
I mean, what's different from
it's amazing.
The usual? Same.
Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.